just come off a call with other rabbis who are similar political motivations. We get together once a month, and it's all of us. What's common to all of us is holding these multiple truths, the nuance. I was even tempted. Somebody asked me last week, "What kind of a congregation are we? What kind of Jewish are we? Are we Reform? Are we conservative?" I was going to say we're nuance. We're part of a new Jewish denomination of nuance. Nuancehood. Yeah. It's all about the nuance. What can I say? That's the word of the. Was the word of the month. Now it's going to be the word of the year. So many of you know that we deal with this on an ongoing basis. We'll be taking a break from this class. We'll meet next week, and then we'll be Steve and I. We haven't actually talked about it, but unless you want to go ahead and teach on your own, I'll be going. Sasha and I will be in Israel in less than 2 weeks from now, and we had considered not doing certain things like the Jews Do the Blues concert. Really considered, didn't think maybe this was the time, maybe it was tone deaf, and did speak to a number of my trusted advisors of my life. I've been lucky, so fortunate to have some people that we've been walking together for decades, literally decades, and each and every one of them said, of course, you have to do it. This is the time to do it. And we framed it a little bit differently. Unfortunately, some of the advertising we had already set up was done beforehand. It does sound perhaps tone deaf. But we are going to do it, and we're rearranging the song list accordingly. Even invited one of my rabbinic buddies to come and do a David Broza song, Yeh Tov, just because it's just so. Yeh Tov means it'll be good. It will work out, kind of a thing, and as a prayer. So
how is that going, David? How is will you have a turnout? Or is the energy there right now?
I think that reason Madalena is not with us is because she's bogged down and she's got a deadline today to get the ad book together. We're hopefully by the end of the day we'll have at least the first draft of the ad book, and a lot of people are supporting. As far as ticket sales are concerned, we're still waiting for that. That's the producers themselves. They sell the tickets for us. They give us the door. That is what comes in, but they do the online sales, and I don't have those numbers, but we have a lot of our sponsors, the higher sponsors, that comes with tickets, so we know. So I'm guessing, I think a full house there is probably 120, 100. We'll have at least 100, and it's also the people in the back you can't really see, so the front section will be full. We tried in the past to live stream it. Doesn't work. It's too complicated for us. But we hope to have some clips that we can share with everybody afterwards if you're not able to come. If you are able to come, or if you are able to help sponsor this event, this is our only fundraiser during the year. And if you have found, and many of you have helped us out, but if you found that you've benefited from these classes that we do here, we don't want to take payment for classes ever. That's not the way we want to do it. We've set it up differently, but we still need to get by from year to year with our annual budget. So if you're able to, and this year we're honoring Richard, who's here in the Hollywood Squares together with us. To his chagrin, he's not happy being honored, not happy that I point him out in this way, but he absolutely deserves it. Dude, this man works like no other person in a volunteer organization that I have ever run into. And it's not for his ego. It's not for fame. Although
it's because it's fun.
There you go. Because crunching numbers, he's the treasurer.
Yeah, I like to crunch numbers. I've always been weird that way. So I like numbers. So we have sold a number of $25 tickets though the last week. I'm aware of that. Okay. I'm calling it the Schnurris section.
No, you don't call it. They're the popular set. They're the ones that want to come, that love the music, right? And their career, they're retired from a career of teaching. So we'll leave it.
Yes, exactly. Yes, there's gonna be they're all in the back there.
Will we be able to buy an MP4 or video or DVD of the Jews Do the Blues?
We'll be able to do something. We'll put up something online. I in the past I have said we're going to record the whole thing, and for some reason that never ever works out. If Madalena was here, she would probably say, no, it did last year, whatever. I don't know. we'll certainly have bits and pieces that we'll send you. And if nothing else, we'll have we'll have awarding Richard his prize, his
If
desire.
it helps, Malka, I'll be happy to call you and sing a song to you. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Thank you.
But if we do, we'll certainly let everybody know what we have and put the links up to those recordings. Okay, well, here we are back with Isaiah 44. And although our author, our prophet, our narrator has given us quite a bit about false idols, there seems to be a big section about it's God the maker versus the makers of little g gods, and that seems to be very much in the background here. Steve spoke when we began our study about the Deuteronomic way of thinking and how important that is in the retelling of the history of Israelite and Judean history in the book of Samuel and Kings, the pitfalls of idolatry, and that's come up recently in another series that I did with the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County, where I was asked to relate different interfaith experiences and things that I've done, and one of them was I set aside apart for my experiences with Buddhism and Hinduism, especially when I've come in contact over the years with actual idols and things, and my interpretation. But that's for another time. Stephen, you want to give us some context for this chapter?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I do think it's got this riff on idols, starting in verse 9. It's unique in that it's prose. It's like a prose essay. It's the only prose piece in 2nd Isaiah, so it's distinctive for that reason. I also think that I'm hoping to get some better understanding of the nature of these household gods, these idols that came out of Assyria and the Mesopotamian culture, because clearly this is a polemic against those, and there's a scoffing, mocking tone from prophet Isaiah about them. But what were they really? And so I'd love to thicken that soup a bit when we get to it. Other than that, I think, a lot of the idea of in verse 1 to 5, thus said God, your maker. So, yeah, this theme that you've drawn on, the maker versus the makers, is prominent, and that's kind of the first time, or one of the rare times, that 2nd Isaiah uses that term. We go back to my servant a couple of times. Let's see. Yeah. So let's just dive in, I guess.
Stephen Byrne, you want to read today?
Okay. 1 through 5. But hear now, O Jacob, my servant, Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus said God, your maker, your creator, who has helped you since birth. Fear not, my servant Jacob, Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. Even as I pour water on thirsty soil and rain upon dry ground, so will I pour my spirit on your offspring, my blessing upon your posterity. And they shall sprout like grass, like willows by watercourses. One shall say, I am God's. Another shall use the name of Jacob. Another shall mark his arm of God and adopt the name of Israel.
Some interesting possibilities here. Any first reactions, Stephen?
Yeah, I didn't understand Jeshurun. He says, "Fear not, my servant Jacob," and then he says Jeshurun. I didn't know what's that?
So Yeshurun in Hebrew, Jeshurun is another synonymous name of Yaakov, Israel.
Okay.
I don't know I mean, I don't know, I didn't look up the etymology for today, but it does probably come from yashar as in straight, and right, justice, kind of one of those words. Different than the Yisrael from the first letters that look the same in Hebrew, consonants from Yisrael, which is from a totally different verb. But Vahi Bishur Melech. Yeah. Yeshurun is, you find it parallel to Yisrael in Psalms and other places as well. Yeah. So and that's part of it. That's kind of to me, that's the attraction of this particular section, is there's different ways to be God's own, right? It's just, I am God's, or I'm going to use the name Jacob, or I'm going to use, Yisrael. That's in contradistinction to how I and therefore we in Or Hamidbar understand Yisrael in our liturgy. I think I pointed out before, because we are an inclusive congregation, inclusive not only of all kinds of Jews, but all those that want to be part of the Jewish traditional thing that we're doing, whether it's prayer or study or social justice. We understand Yisrael in the fullest universal sense of those who struggle with God, or those who struggle with themselves even, as opposed to, Israel, the people, which is synonymous with Jewish or with Judah, right? So while all these terms have their own places in different places, they've come together certainly at the time of the writing of this. But I like this idea that there's many ways to show that you are mine.
I also note the subscript of Or Hamidbar, spiritual Judaism in the desert, and then I look at even as I pour water on thirsty soil and rain upon dry ground, and just that image of spiritual Judaism, which has a universal bent to it, and an inside out quality, but in the desert, that's rich. I see that differently now.
Thank you. Don.
Yeah, there's a cross-reference to Deuteronomy 33:15, I think, using that name, and the translation I have is that it means upright, that it's a pet name for Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yashar, upright, straight, right. So to continue on what you the opening that you gave here, Stephen, with the desert metaphor here, in Jewish liturgy, there's two major parts of every morning and every evening prayer, and that is the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. So that's kind of the centerpiece. There's blessings before, blessings afterwards. That's the first. That's A of an morning and an evening service. B is the Amidah, is the silent devotion, the standing devotion, sometimes called the 18 benedictions, even though the version that most Ashkenazim, what most people use today is 19, and that's fascinating unto itself how it can be called the prayer of 18, but it has 19 blessings. That has to do with the development of liturgy in over a 1,000 years, this particular prayer. But in that prayer, the first blessing is about the ancestors. Elohei Avraham, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Rivka, etc. Why are we here? It's kind of like, why are we doing this? Why am I standing right now with my feet together, have just bowed down in the direction of east? Why am I doing this? Because I have, as says every Jew who prays that prayer, I have a relationship, an unbroken relationship with the ancestors. So I'm continuing that tradition. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm not in another faith tradition. That's why I'm not talking to the idols in my house, as we'll get to in a little bit. And then the second blessing is one which is called Gvurot Kshamim. It is called heroism is a direct translation, but there's got to be a better thing. And the second blessing talks about what God can do. The first is, why am I talking to you, God, God of Israel? Because we have a historical background. Second is, why am I talking to you? Because God, you can get things done. I'm being way oversimplistic here, of course. And the gist of that blessing is that God can raise the dead. In other words, that's the absolute par excellence of God. God can give life even in a place of death. Now, it shouldn't come, or maybe it is a surprise, but Judaism does believe, classical Judaism, in the resurrection of the dead, not in the same way. But still, they all draw, both the Christian and Jewish traditions draw from the book of Daniel, who is the first, at least written, account of resurrection of the dead in the days to come, in order to justify God's action. If these people were good and they kept God's mitzvot, God's commandments, how could they die? And the author of Daniel's solution that, well, oh, don't worry, they're only dead now, but they're going to come back later, right? So this is not connected directly. Certainly not Judaism, not connected to Jesus and the resurrection. So it's a different file under the heading of resurrection. And that's what the blessing talks about. And this is the blessing that during the time of year between Sukkot, the festival of the booths from October, until Pesach, the Passover, we add Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hagashim. We add the words, and God causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall. And many Jews, not all Ashkenazic Jews, but Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews and Jews of the land of Israel, we add more, the other part of the year, we talk about God causing the dew to fall. One way or another, the central part, the high part of this particular blessing has to do with water on the earth, and this idea of resurrection. There were years that I didn't use the words resurrection in the footsteps of Mordechai Kaplan, who I consider one of my teachers. He was gone. I mean, we overlapped a little bit, but I never got to know him. Who reformulated that blessing, because he says we don't believe in the resurrection of the dead in that way. And so a long time I didn't say it until I came back to it with this idea that there's a constant resurrection going on in the earth of things dying and things coming up alive. And even me going to sleep at night is a certain element of death, a part of death. As the Talmud says, you're 1/60th dead when you go to sleep at night. And then that idea of I'm waking, I'm bringing brought back to life. That is conscious mindfulness in the world. And so to me, that's very much in the background here, right? There was a time of death, a time of death to the people when they were in exile. Coming back now is a time of life again. The ground is moist, the water is flowing, the juices are flowing. And then when you see that, when you feel that, then you remember that you're mine, says God. Sermon is over, sorry.
Yeah, that's a nice frame, David, for I mean, the Deuteronomic theology of you obey, you're blessed, you disobey, you suffer. Second Isaiah comes out with it's God's initiative in the first person, and you are now dead in exile, but I will take the initiative to resurrect you as a people and return you to your land, which is inconceivable. There's no way that can really happen apart from God's initiative. And then I like this piece, so I will pour my spirit on your offspring. That's a unique use of that word. It's usually the charism or the spirit is given to a prophet or to an individual, but here it's to a people. I will give you my spirit, blessing upon your posterity. It suggests, because of its rarity, the expectation in the book of Acts that we studied last year, in Acts chapter 2, where they're waiting on that spirit, upon the people. So I see a connection there that anticipates that.
I think even in Joel, that he says that I will pour out my spirit upon you and your sons and daughters will prophesy. Mm-hmm. So even before Acts, I think Joel picks up on that motif.
Yeah.
There's a echo of it also in the story of the prophets in Numbers, when Joshua, or the Nar, the Moses' servant, says Eldad and Medad, they're prophesying in the camp, right? All the elders have been brought together, the 70 elders, and somebody says, somebody goes and tells on them. That's unofficial, that's unsanctioned prophecy. And Moses says, I wish would it be that everybody would be that prophet. There's a little sparkle of that idea that it's not just for individuals. It's kind of halavai. I don't know how to say halavai in English. Sasha, halavai. If it only would be, kind of a thing. Or our Muslim friends say, inshallah, inshallah, may God's will it to be. Yeah. Anybody notice another shall mark his arm of God? Any ideas about that at the end section?
Is that a tattoo?
I don't think so. You may know the Leviticus kind of forbids tattoos, although many of us would say those would be idolatrous tattoos. And I think many Jews today have tattoos that they put.
Phylacteries. Phylacteries.
I thought that in the beginning, but I actually saw it. I saw a 19th century. I think Mitzudat David is a 19th century commentary that I like better. And then he says, and it wouldn't be in this translation. His translation would be, if it was in English, it's in Hebrew. V'zeh yichtov yado ladonai, and this one will sign it. It's like you're going to sign it. I'll sign right now. I will sign it. I don't know if there's an expression like that. In Hebrew, it's ani chotem al zeh. If somebody says, "Are you sure about this?" Yes, ani chotem al zeh. I would sign that as if you're signing your testimony on something. Yeah, that's what Don suggested. Perhaps it's tefillin, phylacteries. Yeah.
Or could it have to do with, like in Shemot, where he says that, with an outstretched arm, God's outstretched arm? Could it have to do with that?
So
his saving power, his power in his arm.
But the challenge with that would be, Malka, Ze Yomar Ladonai. The person will say,
right.
God, Ani. Ladonai ani, v'zeh yikra b'shem Yaakov. This one will do this one. They're talking about people. V'zeh yichtov yado, right? It's not that God will write with his arm. It's the person will write something about the arm. But sure, the inspiration could have come from the I'm of the outstretched arm. Perhaps that, yeah. What people do you come from? I'm of the outstretched arm people. I am of the nuanced people. I'm part of the nuanced party.
Can we go back to the pouring of the Spirit on your offspring? Could we say that is a deepening of the covenantal promise to Abraham, that whatever those blessings are will be realized and expanded and nurtured in the progeny of the people? Can we?
I think so, sure.
Well, and I would add to that, Don, the idea of and adopt the name of Israel. I think Paul picks up, maybe not in particular this, but the idea of Gentiles, the nations, being adopted into the covenant people.
Like in Romans with the olive tree?
Well, that as well, yeah. But also in Ephesians, that idea of we're adopted into the covenant people as wild branches.
Okay. Hey, Megan, you want to read the next section, 6 to 8? Oh, I just wanted to point out, you'll see, for those that see the Hebrew, on there's a repetitive term here, which is just quintessentially prophetic, right? Ko amar Adonai, right? This is God. This is thus God said. The addition here is ko amar, in the first paragraph is ko amar Adonai osecha, as Stephen vitzarecha, qualifying God Adonai as the one who made you, the one who formed you. But and that's one way of approaching biblical text when you want to kind of break it down into smaller literary units, is to look for these formulae. Ezekiel has all sorts of different ones and sub. So what's cool about that is that the text that we received, as you may know, is all just lines filled with letters, and in some cases with almost no spaces between the words, and like from Roman inscriptions, if you've seen before, or Greek or Latin inscriptions. And so the narrator, the writer themselves have put these little flags in that'll tell us sometimes where to take a break, where to start a new section. So Ko Amar Adonai is one of them, and that's how this section begins. Megan, 6-8.
Just like, thus said God, the sovereign of Israel, their Redeemer, God of hosts. I am the first and I am the last. There is no God but me. Who like me can announce, can foretell it, and match me thereby? Even as I told the future to an ancient people, so let anyone foretell coming events to them. Do not be frightened. Do not be shaken. Have I not from the old predicted to you? I foretold, and you are my witnesses. Is there any God then but me? There is no other rock, I know none.
Anyone? The term rock, tsur, is very much part of the Deuteronomy, especially the end, comes up a lot. But this chapter seems to be a treasure chest of names for God. I'm reminded of I was at a conference, an interfaith conference in Doha, Qatar, years ago in the aughts, when I thought that something good might come out of it. I think I went 3 times, maybe 4 times, until I realized it was fun to be in a very fancy hotel and to be the only Israeli in hundreds of square miles. But then I realized it really wasn't going anywhere. But I remember someone talking about a Christian scholar giving a paper on God as the architect. God is the architect. And one of the Muslims from Palestine got up in the comments and dug into him. How dare you assign another name, a new name to God? There are only, I forgot what the Muslim tradition is, 60 names, or there's only certain names in the Muslim tradition, according to this interpretation of Islam, of God. And there can be no more. Any more additional names, this is what this guy was saying, is blasphemous. And thinking to myself, if only we would continue to come up with more names, right? But this chapter is a glossary of different or a list of different names for God, and here's some more in it. But Tsur is an old one, and when I think of Tsur, of course, I remember the commercials for the Rock of Gibraltar insurance company, right? That rock, that Tsur, that stone.
I thought Ani Rishon Vani Aharon. We use that a lot in the liturgy.
Right.
Levante Ein Elohim, and besides me, there is no God.
Right. Ein od milvado. So that comes back to what we were talking about with Sid last week about before what was, is, and will be, and the timelessness, and all this. Stephen is setting it up for the coursework, or the class we're the lesson we're going to get about idolatry. This is all laying the groundwork for understanding. This is what God is, and then in the next section is what God isn't. That's my simplistic understanding of this. What do you say, Tara? You must have some nuggets for us.
No, but I really enjoyed the next section. The mocking of all the idols and such. I think it's just really good.
So would you like the honor of being the head mocker of today?
Sure, I'll mock. The makers of idols all work to no purpose, and the things they treasure can do no good, as they themselves can testify. They neither look nor think, and so they shall be shamed. Who would fashion a god or cast a statue that can do no good? Lo, all its adherents shall be shamed. Their craftsmen are merely human. Let them all assemble and stand up. They shall be cowed, and they shall be shamed. The craftsman in iron with his tools works it over charcoal and fashions it by hammering, working with the strength of his arm. Should he go hungry, his strength would ebb. Should he drink no water, he would grow faint. The craftsman in wood measures with a line and marks out a shape with a stylus. He forms it with scraping tools, making it out with a compass. He gives it the form of a person, human beauty, to dwell in a shrine. For his use, he cuts down cedars. He chooses plane trees and oaks. Ooh, this goes on. Should I continue?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
He sets aside trees of the forest or plants firs, and the rain makes them grow. All this serves a mortal for fuel. He takes some to warm himself, and he builds a fire and bakes bread. He also makes a god of it and worships it, fashions an idol and bows down to it. Part of it he burns in a fire. On that part he roasts meat. He eats the roast and is sated. He also warms himself and cries, "Ah, I am warm, I can feel the heat." Of the rest he makes a god, his own carving. He bows down to it, worships it. He prays to it and cries, save me, for you are my God." It really does sound ridiculous.
And maybe, Terry, I think 18 to 20 kind of go with that prose piece. Can you read those as well? And then we can.
They have no wit or judgment. Their eyes are besmeared and they see not. Their minds, they cannot think. They do not give thought. They lack the wit and judgment to say, part of it I burned in a fire. I also baked bread on the coals. I roasted meat and ate it. Should I make the rest an abhorrence? Should I bow down to a block of wood? He pursues ashes. A deluded mind has led him astray, and he cannot save himself. He never says to himself, the thing in my hand is a fraud. You know, the thing that strikes me is, I mean, this is really laughable when you read it and realize, you know, it's so true, but yet we make false idols still of things that we think are important. You know, I mean, if you take something like wealth, worldly wealth, and it really doesn't, I mean, it serves a purpose, just like wood or iron, that you can make things with it and you can make a living. But, you know, we use different kinds of things as our idols, but it's still just as pathetic today.
Those of you who live here in Palm Springs know that I have an annual campaign against, it comes in January, February, against a particular festival that draws hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands, but I think hundreds of thousands of people here. It's not Pride. I'm all with Pride. That was just now this last weekend. It's not even with the film festival. I can understand that. It is what I call mid-century paganism.
Oh, okay.
It's the mid-century modernism movement. We have a lot of mid-century modernist architecture here. And I have heard and seen people relate to buildings with passion and compassion when it comes tearing down, who are absolutely, in my opinion, void of any feelings towards the people, you know, people who are living on the streets or other issues or the environment. I see sometimes, not everybody, of course, and I'm making a blanket statement, but there seems to be a bit of idolatry, I think, in what is the value, as in not value, money value, what is the value of a building? What does it mean that it has this kind of a thing, and who designed it? I've seen tours of buildings that look nothing like the way they were designed, merely because the original design was by a famous architect, right? And people will pay money to go to see what it isn't, right? You could only see what it was with these blurry photographs that are unpropped. I mean, so that's just an example. We do with Hollywood as well. We do with so many different things.
In fact, where we live when we're in Palm Springs is right across the street from a neighborhood where tours are given. And I walk there all the time. And I was walking and all these people, there's a small group and they're having a walking tour. And they're all taking a picture of this house, and it's one of the ugliest houses in the neighborhood of all of those. You know, some of them are really nice over there, but
Deepwell.
yeah, it was in Deepwell Estates, and they're taking this picture, and I kind of got the gist of it was designed by some guy, but the frontage is like a wall. You can't see anything, but they're all taking pictures. Man, they should take a picture of something else, because again, it was just the name associated with it, but yet there's nothing of beauty there.
What about art? I mean, there definitely is art. You know, art is in the eye of the beholder, right? So
Rabbi and Steve, were these I'm a little confused about, were people worshiping the idol itself, or were the idols representing a concept or an idea of a spiritual being that didn't exist?
I think the latter, Richard. I think, you know, obviously we have the prohibitions against graven images in the commandments in Deuteronomy and elsewhere. We get the idea that it's stupid and fruitless to invest our power, our beliefs in things that are ultimately dead, whether it be an ideology or mammon, power, money, a celebrity. We get all that, and we get that, you know, we're mortals, and the idea of bowing down to a mortal object. While this particular text mocks that and makes fun of it, I think in fact, Mircea Eliade, a lot of archaeologists and anthropologists of Akkadian culture, of the ancient Near East culture, this was an elaborate process where it was a work of art, right? They take wood and they use their best craftsmen, just like in the Pentateuch, as they carefully described the things that went into the ark and into the temple. In the same way, I think these artisans crafted and used their greatest art to fashion literally a wooden object encased in you know, precious metals. But it was a process where they're trying to give that they clean out the mouth 5 different times. It's a ritual which clearly shows they're just preparing this wooden structure through their rituals to embody, to be the outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual, deeper reality, God, you know, the gods they worship. But then again, the gods that they worshipped in the Mesopotamian river valleys, much like the Baal cults with the Canaanites, they are all about ensuring fertility, ensuring that we'll have a spring. And so they're investing in various entities that are presumed to have numinous powers, you know, that we can't. They recognize their mortality, so they appeal to an unknown, invisible source of power that these crafted objects represent or symbolize. But they don't. There's no sense that they think that little object is actually, you know, the source of that. But they do represent that.
Reading this passage in English, it sounds to me like they're implying that in what they're mocking is that these people making this idol are actually worshiping the thing, the actual wooden or metallic object, as opposed to thinking of it as a physical representation of a spiritual being.
I agree. I think it's a caricature, right? It's clearly it's meant to be snarky. And I'm not saying that Isaiah really thought that they're literally worshiping these little creatures as if they are the source of the power.
Yeah.
Maybe some, right? I mean, people are crazy, but I don't think. I think they're pointing out the fact that whether they represent or symbolize a higher power, nonetheless, that higher power is still not the maker with a
Not
capital
yet.
M. It's
Mhm.
still
As
not.
Rabbi can attest to, I appreciate snarky.
Yeah, well,
Mhm. I wonder
Don,
if the story of Rachel, Raquel, and the teraphim, when she steals the teraphim, and I think I always laugh at that story, and she steals them, and to hide them from her uncle, she sits on them, and I think she's minstrel, and to make a mockery of those gods that he had.
Right, from her father, actually.
Oh, from her father.
Yeah, and the teraphim are household gods, and that's part of it.
Mhm.
And that has a lot to do with tit for tat and what happens to Rachel. Just a second, Don, just to respond to what's that is that we don't have here we don't have the one of the first rules of dialogue, of religious dialogue, to hear about the other person's religion from them and not from something else, is a great example, right? Absolute mockery, right? And we see this. I remember when I was in the Orthodox world, you see the same way of deriding anybody who's not Orthodox Jewish, whether it's conservative Reform Jewish or non-Jews, and all these ideas about what they do. They actually believe, right? They actually believe that. Okay, so this is kind of a it's an easy object kind of a thing, and in some cases maybe even a straw man, maybe, or on the other hand it may be maybe uncovering something that at the time was less thought about. That could be as well. I thought of a prayer that we say on the high holidays that I want to share with you right now. Okay, I'll just. So this is the Ki Nea Chomer, right? It's a lovely, for me, leading the prayers. This is one of my favorite parts of the High Holiday prayers, and this is a English translation. Behold, as the clay is in the hand of the potter, who when he pleases extends it, when he pleases shortens it, so too we are in your hand, most gracious preserver. Look therefore to the covenant and pay no attention to the accuser. This is just one line from it. There's a whole line of crafts. The guy that makes the glass, the guy that does the metal work, the guy that does the woodwork. It's almost reflecting what we read here and projecting it on God. God is the one that does all those kinds of things. And it is a metaphor. It's a metaphor. It's not thought to be in the second chapter of Genesis way of God actually creating human being, the first human being with clay. And that brings me back to my understanding whenever I have spoken with, say, Hindus in religious dialogue. So that even the whole explanation that I have ever heard from any Hindu I've ever spoken with is that we believe in the one God. These are just aspects of that one God. And I wish that Ajit was here to perhaps help us a little bit, bridge that gap to those Eastern religions a little bit.
He just texted me and regrets not being here. He said he'll try next week. He's in Houston. Okay.
All right. So Don, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a sarcastic sermon for upcoming people or people faced with renewal. But I also wanted to say on the issue of idols, the whole concept of icons is really meant to be prayed into existence by the artist and also establish a religious fervor in the heart of the person viewing the icon, to bypass the icon ultimately to the source of God. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Absolutely.
I think that in Christianity, especially Catholicism, there are a lot of those symbols that move beyond the physical object to a greater reality.
That's a great analog, Don. I mean, think of the parades of carrying, Mother Mary in the parade.
Yeah.
think of the elaborate Russian icons that are just bejeweled, and but that idea of icon versus idol is useful here, I think.
I mean, those are beautiful, the Russian icons. I've seen a lot of them. They are pieces of art. But they really are meant to transport you to, as I said, a greater reality.
I think
Great
that's right, and
spirit.
maybe that's the distinction between icon and idol. Eric Fromm talks about idol is that whatever it is that we invest our power into, and then we have to go back to it to get our power back. The problem is we don't get enough return on investment, so we have to give it more and more until finally we've become, locked into that, and we lose our autonomy or our agency in some ways because of that investment into something that's ultimately dead, whether it be status, the car we drive, the identity we get from the house we live in, whatever it is. It's a pervasive subject, and to caricature it and mock it like Second Isaiah does, it's useful, but I think it can be a distraction if we're not careful, and then we forget the subtlety or the nuance of how idolatry actually works in the world, in our lives, in my life.
I'd like to share another source that came to mind now as we're studying, and that is from the Mishnah. It's the section on Rosh Hashanah that talks about, the preceding section talks about, what if it's Rosh Hashanah and somebody is walking by the synagogue and they heard the blowing of the shofar, and the rabbis asked, have they fulfilled the commandment of hearing the voice of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah? Because they weren't in the synagogue. And the answer is, well, it depends. If they walk by and said, oh, it's Rosh Hashanah, that's the shofar, then they fulfilled their obligation. But if they keep walking by and say, what's that strange noise? They haven't fulfilled. And it goes into this interesting double portion of intentionality here. Incidental to the discussion of the required intent when sounding the shofar, the Mishnah, that's this corpus that came into being in writing in the 3rd century in the land of Israel, but oral traditions from beforehand. Mishnah cites the verse, and it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. That's in Exodus, the first war with Amalek that's reported, and you might remember that Joshua and Hur, they prop up his hands and put rocks under them so that they'll win the war. It may be asked, did the hands of Moses make war when he raised them, or break war when he lowered them? In other words, the Mishnah, the rabbis say, could it be dependent upon this magical thing that when Moses' hands were raised? Rather, this is how you should understand it. The verse comes to tell you that as long as the people of Israel turned their eyes upward and subjected their hearts to the Father in heaven, they prevailed. In other words, Moses is lifting his hands up like the guys in the football field. The referees, I think, when they do that, put the hands up. I think that's where they get extra points or something. You can tell how much I know about football. And so they prevailed. But if not, they fell. And now comes the thing that Stephen has referred to just now, and also in a previous meeting that we had. Similarly, you can say that the verse, make for yourself a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole, that bronze serpent. And it shall come to pass that everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live and not die. In Numbers, once again, it may be asked, is it the serpent who kills and the serpent that preserves life, this bronze, this graven image? Rather, when the Jewish people turned their eyes upward and subjected their hearts to the Father in heaven, they were healed. In other words, because our eyes were tilted upwards, looking at that thing up on a pole. But if not, they rotted from their snake bites. Returning to the halakhic discussion, the Mishnah continues, a deaf mute, an imbecile, and a minor who sounds the shofar cannot discharge the obligation on behalf of the community. This is the principle with regard to similar matters. Whoever is not obligated to do a certain matter cannot discharge the obligation on behalf of the community. I left that last part there so that you see how our sources are built from what we call agadah, that is the Torah of feeling, belief, emotions, and what you actually do, halakha. the things that are done. And so here there's a degree of, when it comes to our showing of idols, so to speak, when it comes to that, we're able to play, no, you misunderstand it. It's representative of something greater. If now I would say from an interfaith point of view, if only we would grant that same generosity to others as well, who have different beliefs and different practices. Comments, questions? Well, then let's go ahead and see if we can move ahead. Jimmy, you want to read the next section for us? 18 to 20. We're now at 21-23.
Sure. Remember these things, O Jacob, for you, O Israel, are my servant. I fashioned you. You are my servant. O Israel, never forget me. I wipe away your sins like a cloud, your transgressions like mist. Come back to me, for I redeem you. Shout, O heavens, for God has acted. Shout aloud, O depths of the earth. Shout for joy, O mountains, O forest with all your trees. For God has redeemed Jacob, has gained glory through Israel.
This idea of machiti cha'av pisha'echa that I put in the Hebrew in bold, those of you that are familiar with Jewish liturgy, that's part of the slichot and part of the high holiday, that idea that we can be forgiven if we make amends, we can be forgiven, and the stain is wiped away as if it's missed. This ability to press the reset button. And in general, with this lesson, which Second Isaiah is giving us right now, is it couldn't resist the opportunity to mock the idol worship, but is also mocking or what's the word? Scolding Israel for when they were sucked into that part as well. And then explain to him there is a way out of that will bring about what came before, and this plentiful moisture, water, whatever. And then Wayne, the last section for us. But we're back to that formula of Ko Amar Adonai, thus said God.
Thus said God, your Redeemer, who formed you in the womb. It is I, God, who made everything, who alone stretched out the heavens and unaided spread out the earth, who in all the omens of diviners and make fools of the augurs, who turn sages back and make nonsense of their knowledge, that confirm the word of my servant and fulfill the prediction of my messengers. It is I who say of Jerusalem, it shall be inhabited, and of the towns of Judah, they shall be rebuilt, and I restore their ruined places. I, who said to the deep, be dry, I will dry up your floods. And the same who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, he shall fulfill all my purposes. He shall say of Jerusalem, she shall be rebuilt, and to the temple you shall be founded again.
And this is a kind of a surprise, right? Suddenly Cyrus is a person. He's there, right there, named as the tool of God in this redemptive process.
He's an Israelite king. He's a shepherd.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, huh?
I think it's helpful. And I love how he comes full circle with this, drawing on the image of the creation. And so, you know, hopefully, I think many of us understand the Babylonian or the Mesopotamian mythology of creation, where you have this primordial chaos, Tiamat, the mother goddess, and it's Marduk who kills Tiamat and fashions creation and human beings out of this dead primordial chaos, and what's fashioned out of that is it comes out of death and destruction, as opposed to the creation story of the Israelites, of the exiles in Babylon, that beautiful Genesis 1 and 2, where it's good. And there's a transcendence. It's not just fashioned from the dead the dead stuff. And so I love that that idea of the transcendence, the universality, the goodness, and notice that as Heschel keeps reminding me, there's a pathos here. This is in the first person again, Yahweh speaking, and there's so much emotion. And shout, oh heavens, shout for joy. Come back to me, for I redeem you. It's again God's initiative, not based on what they've done, but to pull them out of their captivity and back into the good created order of things. And then using Cyrus, who my brother Bill, God bless him, thinks is Donald Trump, or thinks Donald Trump is the new Cyrus. I mean, I'm for real. I mean, he thinks that. But for him to actually name this Persian king who's going to do the impossible, it's going to return them to their home. So I think it's beautiful.
Indeed, quite extraordinary. Okay, folks. Well, we managed to end on time today. And again, we'll see each other next week and a week from now. I don't know how awake I'll be because the concert will be the night before, and I'll probably be so filled with adrenaline, worried about hitting the wrong note on the saxophone or clarinet that I may take me a while to fall asleep. We'll be there. If you're able to, again, we can't stress how much we welcome everybody to be here regardless, but if you're able to help us out financially, all the information's in all of our stuff.
Hope you make lots of money, Dave.
I appreciate it.
All right.
And maybe look forward to a better week for all of us.
Okay. Peace.
Thanks.